Well, hello. Welcome to another episode of The Family Business where I'm thrilled to introduce Rob and Elana Gershon. Hey guys, thanks for coming on.
Our
Thank you.
pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, just to give you guys some context, the thought behind this whole concept was to just show how careers and family are intertwined. And so some of the things we'll talk about, we'll get to know you both and a bit about your kids and your career choices and things that you've done and how it's affected and where you've got to rather successfully today. So the easiest way to start is for each of you to take just 1 minute and give a quick snapshot of what you're doing today so everyone has some context of who you are. And then from there, we can get into the fun stuff.
I am a school and clinical psychologist. I primarily, that's my, paid employment. I'm also a mom of four, and I also do volunteer work in my community. I'm quite active in the PTAC and PTA in Greenwich, Connecticut. I work with, I am employed part-time and do evaluations and assessment for children age 2 to 22. I work with children with learning disabilities, psychiatric disorders, adults with developmental delay. I also do some therapy. And when I'm not employed or doing that, I'm also raising my family of four. We have two college graduates and two in college at this point, a freshman and a sophomore.
It's a full plate. And Rob,
Yes.
you're probably responsible for being full. It's your fault.
Well, so currently I'm the CEO of Convergent Dental, a medical device company. And this is the third time, my third CEO appointment. And for this one, I have been with Convergent Dental for 10 months. And it does require I think every CEO has a similar situation. It does require that you have a lot of strong support at home and stability at home that frees you up to have flexibility to move as quickly as this dynamic healthcare industry is, and to remain nimble. So having a very stable home is critical to that.
Yeah, I mean, look, once you cross that bridge past two kids, you're taking on a whole nother set of responsibilities. Like, because 3 kids is a lot more than 2 kids, I found. And when you jump to 4, I mean, I'm impressed because I told my wife after the second one, like, listen, the bank's closed. We're done here, and that's that. So we were just talking about this before. When I first started speaking with you, you only had 2 kids at that point. That's how long ago, 20 years we've been chatting. And that's one of the best parts about what we do is we get to build a relationship that's long-term. So why don't we start there? So when I first met you, it was 2003.
Yes.
And you had 2 small children. And so I remember you being a sales and marketing up-and-coming guy with a significant amount of just scalability. You just screamed that way. So I'm curious. So let's roll back to your COVIDian days.
Sure.
What part of the business were you in? Remind me.
So I was in what was Tyco Healthcare at the time, and specifically U.S. Surgical.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the endomechanical, the world of endomechanical products. So your staplers, trocars, and so forth, and suture. So that was really my formative years in the medical device space. And I came in as a product director. So I came in from a marketing perspective. That was my entree.
Did you carry a bag during those Leon days and all of that when it was, let's just say it was fast paced? I think there's a lot of other ways to say that.
I think I heard you say Leon days, the Leon Hirsch days. And I was after the Leon Hirsch days.
Oh, okay.
Leon exited when Tyco Healthcare acquired U.S. Surgical, maintained the name U.S. Surgical. So for me, while I'm connected to Leon, and I've actually never worked at Surgical at the time, but I know all the stories. I'm sure you do as well.
Yeah.
Of that environment. But he really created a legacy of excellence that I think remains to this day, and really was very, very demanding of his teams. especially from an R&D perspective, which I wasn't a part of, and then later the sales perspective. You asked if I carried the bag. I did. In fact, I might have carried the bag longer than I was in marketing. I was very fortunate in that I had a wonderful, wonderful mentor who really took me under his wing, and he ran US Surgical at the time. His name is Alan Panzer, if you know Alan.
I know of him.
Yeah, and just a wonderful, wonderful mentor, and I'll never forget it. It was my third anniversary at US Surgical, and I shared with him how excited it was his vision to bring me in marketing. I had a lot of consulting and transaction experience prior, so the natural entry point for me was business development, especially when US Surgical was growing through acquisitive growth. It just was a strong fit. And then when I shared with Alan my vision of what I wanted to do, my aspiration, which was to really be part of senior leadership and be a CEO one day, he gave me a completely different vision for my entry point, which was marketing. He viewed that as a mini CEO. You will be exposed to the operations of the business or you'll be exposed to every department within this large organization at the operating level, and you'll really learn. So I did that for 3 years and I loved it.
I've always felt, it's funny you should say that, because I've always felt that marketing is a hub. And some people see it as a luxury. And so when times get tight, sometimes marketing feels it harder than other parts of the business. But I'm like, marketing touches R&D, clinical, regulatory, quality, manufacturing, sales. I mean, it touches everything. And I don't know if any other function touches every spoke like marketing does.
Yeah, it's interesting. Absolutely, at the operating level, because you could look at IT, you could look at HR and say, yeah, they touch every department, but not at the operating level.
Yep, agreed.
And that was the wisdom, and that was the luck that I really had, is for someone like Alan to take me under his wing. Now, my third anniversary, I was there for the better part of a decade. I just made an appointment to see him in his office just to thank him for his vision and his leadership. And he said to me, I'm so glad that you came to visit, because now you're ready for your next assignment. And my next assignment was carrying the bag. And I said to him, I'm really surprised you want me to do that, because I'm trained, because I had to go through Salesforce training like any other rep. I'm trained, I'm certified, and I spend so much time in the field. I really got it. I don't need to go spend more time in the field. And he said to me, that's really, really interesting. That's a fascinating response. I'm not asking. If you want to do what you said you want to do and you want to be a CEO, you're going to carry the bag. And I did so for many years at different levels, as a regional manager, then as an area vice president, and eventually the VP of sales. And those were really important, kind of lessons. And the last thing I'll say about it is what I learned, because I then came to his office several years later to thank him once again. And what I learned from that experience is I was literally traveling the country in the same ORs, doing the same procedures with the same doctors, with the same reps in the room, and having a completely different experience. Because once you take the burden, if you will, of the home office and corporate off your mind and do nothing but live and breathe your customers, you see the world differently. Okay. And he propositioned me when I went to his office to thank him again. He said, I'm so glad you came to visit me. He said, you're now ready for your next assignment. And I said, I don't want a next assignment. I'm loving this. I've never had so much success. I've never made so much money. And I've never had so much fun. Why don't I stick with this? And he reminded me of what my aspirations were. And he said to me, if you want to do what you said you wanted to do, now it's time to come back in-house. And what I did is I reflected on my experience. And I thought about, what did I derive from carrying the bag? And what I learned is I developed instincts that I could never have developed if I didn't carry the bag.
Well, the closer you are to the customer and the patient changes the way you look at everything. It's very easy to be in marketing or engineering, and even though you have all this knowledge, you're detached. You're not standing at the bedside. You're not standing elbow to elbow. So, Elana, I would love to get some updates because to catch up to where Rob is. So at this point, were you practicing when he was first starting his career, or did you start
Yeah,
practicing later?
I've been continually practicing from the time I finished grad school.
S-
I, yeah, in different positions throughout the years.
Yeah, so because I know what his career was like early, and I
Mhm.
know what it's like when someone's traveling heavily for sales, and you're trying to continue your practice, and obviously you've got a couple, three
Oh,
kids at
it's an
that point.
excellent point. Yeah, I mean that's why when it was a wise decision back when I was really young in grad school to do the master's in school psychology, doctorate in clinical, because I wanted the flexibility, thinking in the future. Working with school districts, you're on a school schedule.
Yeah,
So, I mean, if you have a clinical practice, you're on a 24/7 schedule because, things happen. And I geared my career towards school psychology after the second child, because the school calendar was quite helpful in terms of childcare. I mean, as we all know, it's the childcare is the most challenging aspect, and if you are home when your kids are home, from school, which is
yeah.
often like 3 months a year basically, that makes a huge difference. So I did gear more towards school psychology after we had children. I also worked part time because it was just not realistic with the amount of travel that Robert was doing, um, to be able to cover all of the responsibilities of parenting, and work full time myself, especially as the children got older.
I would think. All right, so here's a question I've gotten. It's for both of you. So
Mhm.
whenever you have somebody who's as experienced as you are, Ilana, at what you do, and then you have your own kids, is it hard to take the hat off of being a clinical and school psychologist saying, I'm a mom now,
Well,
or do you have to
no,
balance
just
the
like
two?
Rob, I'm carrying the bag now. That I was thinking when Rob was speaking about carrying the bag and being in that experience. That's exactly what it was like. I remember my first full-time clinical position was at Gouverneur Hospital
Mhm.
a long time ago when I first was out of grad school, and I did not have children. I wasn't even married. And I remember how experienced. I put my heart and soul into every family I worked with and every child I worked with. But now looking back as a parent and understanding the individual challenges and frankly how every child is different, like a lot of it is not nurture or nature. We don't know. There's just a combination of nature and nurture, and you do the best you can. But certainly being a parent myself and then juggling the responsibilities of working and your marriage and giving each child what they need to thrive, I'm carrying the bag, and it makes me a better psychologist.
Well, I would say there's no doubt about that. So, how often do the kids give you the eye roll when they think you're doing some kind of psychological something when you're talking to your own kids?
They don't actually. I
No?
mean, no, I don't really. I'm very practical. I'm very pragmatic. So maybe they're doing it behind my back. Maybe they're texting their friends. I have no idea.
Rob, are they
Nowadays, it's not the eye roll. It's who are they, what are they telling their friends? What are they putting on their Instagram? Who
Yep.
knows?
Tell me about it.
TikTok videos making fun of me. But the point is, I tend to be very pragmatic and I just speak and I don't, I've been out for a very long time and I just go from the heart.
Yep. No, definitely. Look, it shows. You've got four kids who are doing phenomenally well. That's not an accident. So when you traveled and all your kids were, let's just say anywhere from 10 to 18,
Yeah.
and you were gone for a week and you came back in, I'm curious what that was like. My wife calls it burning up on reentry. And I'm curious what that's like when you come in and Ilana's got all four kids doing what they're supposed to do, sports, school activities, their homework, whatever, and then you come in. Is it you come in and you just stand on the side? You come in and you get involved. You come in and you start having an opinion, which she just looks at you like, "Why do you have an opinion right now?" I'm curious
Yeah.
how that goes.
Yeah, so I would say it has evolved over time. So it started when they were even younger, as every time I walked through the door, it was a hero's welcome. It
Yep.
was the greatest feeling in the world. And then over time, when they get into their, teens and 20s, it was no longer a hero's welcome. It was always a welcome, but it was a different conversation. It was, I can't just entered the conversation midstream and have an opinion. It was, just a different experience. But we're a very, very close knit family, and even being on the road, the constant communication kept me very plugged in to everything that was going on. So, I'm not saying it was easy, but I'm saying, kind of the reentry. I didn't really experience that. I never felt, I certainly missed out on certain events. There's no question about it. And my kids are really into sports, our kids. It's interesting. I remember missing some, playoff games. And those were pretty big deals because often I was the assistant coach. But when I'm traveling, and I would miss certain games. And I'll never forget when my oldest son, when I apologized. This only happened once. I apologized for missing a game. And he called a timeout and said, never apologize for missing a game. What I can tell you is, yep, you missed a playoff game that we won, but you've been at every game that counts that I lost. And that's when I needed you, not when we win a playoff
I thought
game.
He was going to say, well, we won without you, so keep taking trips.
Right. Well, yeah, there's that superstition element, but that hasn't hit him.
Well, that happened to me. I coached my son since he was 4. He's 16 now. And I had to travel to one of the conferences, and they won a big game against the best team in the league without me. And his text to me was, stay there. I'm like, serious? Yeah. So Elana, is that an accurate depiction of what that was like when he was gone and you come back? I'm curious what it was like from your end of trying to juggle all that plus your work plus everything else.
I mean, there were periods where Robert traveled for 2 weeks straight. Like he went to China, where he had real long trips. Those are the ones that stand out in my mind. And they tended to always fall on a time when school was closed. Really? So, I would have, but I think the one thing Rob and I would do when the kids were a little bit younger is he would always call me on his way home, from wherever he was, so that I could sort of debrief him for this is what's going on. This is a crisis. This is, a limit I set. Please don't, please back me up. Don't throw me under the bus, that kind of stuff. Like, this is what's going on, giving you a quick debrief in case anybody corners you when you get home. And also, we would things like dinner time were important too. Like I would say, look, if you're we need to have the kids eating dinner around 6:30. And if you're running late, please encourage the kids to eat because, they have to be up, that was when schools were open at 7, they had school at 7 a.m., literally we're getting on the bus at 6:45 a.m. So I was like, I know we want to have dinner as a family, but it's not going to work because if you're getting home at 7:30 and I don't have to go into the whole thing, but just, working together on scheduling and dinner and those types of things to set the kids up for success.
Were there any of those moments where they pretend like you haven't already told them no and they ask dad separately? My kids have done that move and not a fan.
All kids do that. And of course, or they might not agree with something and ask Rob his opinion. And that's fine. It happens in every family. But just, but we have to be consistent together. And if he had been away for a week and is coming home, there could be a lot of conflict if we're not debriefing a little bit before he arrives. So he doesn't say any, he doesn't know. He's tired. He has jet lag. He might have not have slept for 36 hours.
Yep.
Rob, can come home in an interesting condition that I have to debrief him. Shh, this is what you say. Don't do this, blah, blah, blah. Don't mention this. Don't mention that, whatever.
At my house, we have what's referred to in the government as DEF CON. If we're at DEF CON 1 or 5, my wife would be like, we're at 5.
Yeah. And thank God for, and we were able to text, I could send him an email, and when you were talking about sporting events, that's where I was very challenged because sometimes everything was booked at the same time. So we also have 2 kids who are very into science and music, and one would have a performance, a very important orchestra performance, while the other one had a playoff game. And it was like, oh crap, I can't cut myself in half. What am I going to do? And just figuring that out. And again, thank God for video. I could tape something on the phone and upload it, and Rob could look at it and comment. So, what's nice with technology is you could stay involved in some way without actually being there. And I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, except in Rob's case and probably mine too, is that when you're coaching, you can't really video what's going on. It's bad form for you to walk
Yeah.
around with your camera as you're
Well,
coaching.
I don't coach.
Yeah, I was gonna say so
I am
because
transport, preparation, and supervision. I do
yeah.
not do coaching and I also don't do driving. Rob does all the driving instruction and coaching.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Well, you're 4 for 4, so you've got 4 kids scattered, and all of them seem to be heading in a direction of an interesting life. And so I'm curious about that aspect of it. Now that they're adults, in essence, like how often are they all home? How often do you get all 6 of you together? Like what's the house like?
Well, they're all on college schedules now. I mean, we have 2 graduates, so they're on, professional schedules now, and they're not living in the house anymore. And we have 2 college students who, as you know, are home like 5 months out of the year. So it's feast or famine now,
Yep.
basically. Rarely, though, do we have an opportunity, like maybe on a holiday. But even, with holidays now, the college holidays don't overlap very well. So it's rare that we're all together on one holiday. Of course, we appreciate it when it happens, but it's just, it is a lot, it's a lot of transitions I think Rob and I have to cope with now. It's like we have an empty house, then we have 4, then we have 1, then we have 2. It's a different experience.
Do they surprise you or when they're coming?
Shh, they let us know.
For the most part, we've been surprised before, but usually they spill the beans ahead of time.
Yeah.
So you have to keep track of 4 kids, their jobs, their school, and then any sig others in their life. And so you've got to, you guys could have as many as 10 people at a dinner if everybody brings somebody with them.
Yeah.
You'll need a van to wherever you're going.
Yes, we've started experiencing that. Yes. The significant others.
Yeah. And so how does that go? Do they tell you about them? Do they bring them down to to meet you? Or how does it all work? Because I haven't been there yet.
Home. Oh, well, I mean, we're very modern. I mean, they bring their significant others home and we have we have 24, 23-year-olds. Sometimes the significant other stays for the weekend in our home. So now we have, dealing with the normal family politics and being careful around the significant other, because that could end up being our, son or daughter-in-law. So we have to be on our best behavior.
Yeah, it's funny. My son's 16. I had my first parent come in and sit down with me because her daughter was going to stay, not over, but visit for a few hours. And it was just surreal. I'm just staring at this woman and I'm like, I don't know what you want to know, but I'm an open book. Just ask me anything. Yeah. And it's funny. All she wanted to know was, are you staying or are you leaving the house? I'm like, no, I'll stay. I'm not going to leave your daughter here. And it was just funny. I was expecting like a whole conversation about, do I have guns in the house? Do I have a dog in the house? Do I have... And all she wanted to know is if I was staying. So anyhow, but all the kids are single, right? None of them are attached at this point?
Yeah, none of them are married. So our oldest does live with his girlfriend. So
okay. Now, so he's the beat writer for Kentucky, right?
Correct. He is.
And does he live in Lexington?
He does. He after he went to University of Kentucky. Mm-hmm. And out of school, he took a job at a small newspaper, like a written newspaper in Evansville, Indiana. And within the year, UK picked him up as a beat writer. So he relocated back to Lexington. So
I mean, the stories just come out of there, especially. Well, it's not just a basketball school anymore. I mean, most of the sports programs are. I'm a Gator, University of Florida. And so I am very aware of what happens in the SEC. I actually had to beg to be let into Rupp Arena. There wasn't a game going on. It was almost under construction. And the security guard took pity on me. I'm like, look, I'm only here for like a few hours. Is there any way I could just see it? And so he took me on a quick tour. And just the campus is beautiful. Like he must love his job. Is it crazy hours? And is he doing all kinds of things that you find amazing, or what's he doing at the moment?
Yeah, at times I absolutely, because I am a sports nut from a spectator perspective and a little bit from a playing perspective, but I end up living vicariously through him because yes, he works different hours. But late hours. So he now as a beat writer, so he's not employed by UK, he's employed by a local media company, but he has to follow and attend every sporting event. So he's attending every basketball game home and away. He's attending every football game home and away. And he's, spending quality time with the athletes. He's in the locker room and he's at practices and so forth. So what a beat writer does. So he keeps odd hours and unpredictable schedules. And then he'll also follow the baseball team and the women's basketball team. So he really gets, immersed in that environment. And then he moonlights. So he has a radio program that he's a guest on.
Wow.
I think 3 nights a week for the drive time at home, or PM drive time. And then he also will moonlight writing and doing podcasts, doing a couple of different podcasts. So it is really, really interesting. He really gets to interact with SEC athletes when they're in school. And then when they go off to the NBA, the NFL, he still stays connected with them. And one of the coolest kind of moonlighting jobs he's had is working for the MLB Sirius network, covering Major League Baseball, covering postseason, clinching locker room celebrations. So clinching at every single level. And that's pretty cool. So that's why I say kind of live vicariously through him.
Does he have goggles? Because I know once they win, that's the first thing they do is they pass out the goggles.
Yeah, it's funny. He has a picture that I see all the time, which was a Milwaukee Brewers few years ago locker room celebration where he's the only one not wearing goggles. So it's a picture. Yeah, so it's kind of fun.
Nah, it sounds great. I mean, and you've got one of your kids is down here. How's that?
They don't give goggles to the media.
He doesn't need his eyes, apparently. But you have one child down here by us. He said at FAU.
Yes.
Which is interesting. I got my master's there, so I know that campus like the back of my hand. And it's a great school. It's really come into its own. I remember when I first was going there years ago, it was just a few buildings. And now it's campus and dorms and everything else. Like the kids here love it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful area. He's very, very excited to be there, and he's looking at the masters in sports marketing.
Yep.
That's the program that he has his mind on right now, and it's beautiful. I've been down there a lot, and it's just a good fit. It's a really strong fit for him, for Zach.
Well, that's fantastic. You have such a mix, and you have one daughter in the mix of all these boys. And so, Elana, what's that like for her? Does she get a voice, or do the boys just tell her to shush?
Oh, Alexa is amazing. She's very articulate, and she definitely can speak for herself. She was born that way. She handles herself well. And when she was younger, she was very close with her brothers. It was before college and all that. They all got along well. But yeah, she did fine. And it's interesting. She was not a sports fanatic. I don't know why, but she's more into film and writing, screenwriting, visual media arts. She actually was just an assistant director on a film through Emerson.
Really?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Is excelling. Yeah, there. And is just really, just more of a visual media arts writer type of personality. But she definitely knows what she wants and speaks her mind and can handle herself quite well.
Yeah, there's something to be said for growing up with a bunch of men. You're able to really assert yourself, I think, because you have to. If you want to eat what you want, and if you want to watch what you want, and you want the car or whatever it is that every teenager fights over, it's interesting. I think that one of the best parts of being a parent is when your kid finds the thing that lights them up.
Yeah.
And they have their thing, and you're like, oh my God, you love this. That's fantastic.
Yes. Yeah. It gives purpose.
Yeah. My daughter is determined to study mathematics. She's at college now, and she wants to teach. She just teaching lights her up.
Yes.
And I'm like, Olivia, the world could always use more teachers. You want to do it? I'm with you. Because I've seen her tutor kids, and I see how much she just loves doing it. And when they get it, she just floats out of the room when they figure out what it is she's trying to explain. So I'm getting a taste of that. I haven't had a career yet. She's only 19, but we'll see how it goes. So Rob, you went after Henry Schein and you did something interesting. You went to Bovie and then they changed the name while you were there, right?
It was shortly after I left.
Oh,
So
after you
it was
left, it became Apex. Okay.
Yeah, it was Bovie. So the name change occurred when we divested of our core business, which was the electrosurgical space,
Hmm.
and sold the name Bovie and the whole electrosurgical space to a company called Symmetry at the time. It's now has subsequently moved to Aspen. But at the time, so with that, we had to have a name change because we sold the name.
And that was a bit of a turnaround kind of situation for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, so for Bovie, it was a situation. There is a common theme among the three CEO appointments I've had and currently have, and that is taking novel technology in its early stages and driving the adoption of that technology and the whole journey of what is that true commercial path. And it goes from identifying the killer application for the technology right through the full commercial effort and all the decisions that need to be made. And it was a turnaround situation because in this case, it was a product called J Plasma, which is a product that cuts, coagulates, and ablates soft tissue. And the original focus was GYN surgery. And we made a pivot and we pivoted to plastic surgery. And that to this day remains the focus. And the strategy has stood the test of time because that's the pivot that we made. And that's what is fueling the growth of the company to this day. And it's exciting, for me personally, because so much of the team that we built remains part of the execution story today. So I remain very emotionally connected.
Well, if you
Uh,
look at your track record, I mean, you've left every place better than you found it. And you're doing it again in a relatively short amount of time at Conversion. I mean, you and I were laughing about this, I think, a few weeks or months ago, is that sometimes dental is a bit either underrated or underestimated, or let's just be honest, sometimes it's looked at as a redheaded stepchild a bit. And yet you seem to have taken it on to make it more, let's just call it legitimate. And look what you've done with it. I mean, it's really amazing. You could talk for a minute about like how well it's going over there.
Yeah, it's really exciting. So we sell a technology called Celea, and it's a laser. It's a hard and soft tissue laser. Hard tissue, think teeth. Soft tissue, think gums. And it has a real significant contribution to be made to the industry. So the hook, what people get very excited about, is the opportunity to do anesthesia-free, mostly drill-free, blood-free, and suture-free. When you think of soft tissue, dentistry. And it provides a very, very different experience and a very favorable experience for the patient. And for me, what I learned about this technology, and I did more due diligence on the technology, it fit that whole category of adoption worthy technology that has not yet been widely adopted. And this is what I love. I love getting involved with technology that's truly adoption worthy and then finding that commercial path to drive the broad-based adoption. And for me, you talk about, track record. And what I say frequently about the track record is it's great to have that track record. But the reality is this space is so dynamic. The space of healthcare is so dynamic that each one of those experiences simply informs the next journey. There's no one size fits all, but it really teaches you how to think and make really insight driven decisions. And when you gain the insights and you really make informed insights driven decisions, you tend to make more right decisions than wrong. And I think right now, in a short amount of time, we've made a lot of decisions, and I think we've made a lot of right decisions, and it's bearing out. It's bearing out in the numbers, right? That's the most important at the end of the day. And now we're really seeing some real acceleration of growth, and it's just very exciting because at the end, the real winners in all of this are the patients that experience it. And it's a lot of fun. It's just a lot of fun.
Well, most people that fear the dentist, which there are a lot, I mean, that's a fairly high up the list for a lot of people. To hear that something's sutureless and bloodless and relatively painless is enough for them, because most of them are terrified about going. They let the teeth fall out of their head before they'll go to see the dentist.
Yeah.
Huh. So,
Yeah, it's exciting because what our dental customers will tell us is it actually results in them because it expands their ability to do certain things. So I won't get overly clinical, but I'll go to the punchline, which is it actually allows them to save more teeth than they ever expected. In other words, one of the worst things to do is to lose teeth and have to, get a prosthetic. That's a problem. If you could save a tooth, that's a big deal. And often people are in pain and they just say, "Doc, just pull it out, pull it out." But if you can preserve it, that's the best clinical outcome. And what they find is with this technology, they can save a lot more than they ever thought they could. And that's very gratifying for the doctors and very beneficial for the patients.
so you guys are coming across very credible. It's making me wonder if there is not a story to be had or something skeleton wise in your closet. So, Elana or Rob, either one of you can take this before we wrap up. I'm curious if there's something that you guys use as a running joke or a story that's happened where it was just insanity. You had this 4 kids and your 2 careers and everything going on, and something just went absolutely sideways, or something that you can't believe it happened, running through an airport, forgetting someone's uniform at a playoff game. Like, I'm curious if there's something where you guys to this day start cracking up, because my family has dozens of them. And so I'm curious if something happened that you wanted to share.
I mean, I remember one story, Rob, where we were visiting your brother in Virginia,
Yep.
and we were rushing to make a flight, back home. And, so it was coordinating young children, getting everyone fed, dressed, packing, running out of, you're a guest in someone's home. So you're not, you're trying to leave everything perfect. And we rushed to the airport. We get there and the flight wasn't that day.
Awesome.
So I remember that one.
Well, at least you need to go find another hotel room. You just went back to his house.
Yeah, well, Rob, Rob is a frequent flyer. So,
Oh, you were able to make it work?
Well, he negotiated a later flight, and we have pictures of the kids all sprawled out on the carpet, watching movies on their iPads and doing different things.
Yep.
But at that point, you really don't want to go back.
It's funny. That same exact thing happened to us. My wife, who never makes mistakes, she's a former auditor. The woman is perfect. She made a flight on the wrong day. We get to LaGuardia. I've got 2 little kids. And she goes, "Oh no." "What do you mean, oh no?" She said, "Our flight's tomorrow." So she used, I don't know how many miles to similar to what you did to get us out of there. But in our case, it was a hotel. We didn't have anyone's house to go back to. There was nowhere to go. It's New York City. It's not like there was a hotel I could have just gone back to. So exactly what you're saying. The kids were laying around for hours till we finally got out of there.
And I have another story.
Go, please.
This actually mentions Jake, which we haven't mentioned Jake. And he's our second oldest, and he's very into science, math, and music. And we went on vacation to a resort in Florida. It's sort of like that movie Vacation. Remember with Chevy Chase?
Yeah, of course. No.
Yes. We sell it to all the kids, get them all excited. We're going here, and it's going to be this great situation, and blah blah blah. And we get there, and I'm not going to name the name of the resort, but we leave the room for a minute, and then we see Alexa and Zachary standing on the bed with thousands of ants crawling around them. And then Jake, who is a very creative thinker too, is like, "I'm calling grandma." Grandma lived in Boca.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to stay here. I'm calling grandma to pick me up. So but again, managing all 4 in a resort and the expectations, it was very funny.
Hey, listen, at that age, everything becomes exacerbated into something insanity where you just start to say, "All right, everybody, stop. You're not making this better." My wife always says, "De-escalate," because when everything starts to get crazy, she's always like, "All right, everybody settle." So we want to thank Rob and Elana Gershon for being on the show. They've been extraordinary guests, every bit as good as I thought I would be. Thanks so much for joining, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was our pleasure and a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, this has been the Family Business, where we talk about how family and careers are intertwined. We've met the Gershons. We've learned all about them. Thanks so much for being on, guys. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.